This is my Rivian R1T launch edition that I bought back in May of 2022. I paid $82,000 for it, and on a full charge, it says it can go about 293 miles. However, in my real-world test where I drove it until it died, it only got 236 miles. And since taking ownership, I've already put over 10,000 miles on it. So the question is, how's it going? Are there any surprises? And what does my wife really think about this whole thing?
I think it's a great idea.
But the main thing I want you to know is that the Rivian is a mid-size pickup. It's about the size of a Toyota Tacoma. Now, it's loaded with all kinds of bells and whistles like a gear tunnel, a hidden flashlight in the door, and even a speaker that pops out of the center console. There's also a decent-sized front trunk, or frunk, and it has a 4.5-foot bed that extends all the way out to 7 feet with the tailgate down. Mostly, the thing about the Rivian, though, is that it drives like a sports car. It's not like any other truck on the market and can beat the next fastest truck ever made by about half a football field in a drag race. But of course, no vehicle is perfect, so here's the interview I did with my wife where we talk about all the highlights and the issues we've had along the way. Well, my love, it's been 10,000 miles since we took ownership of the Rivian R1T. How are you feeling about it? Good idea? Bad idea?
I think it's a great idea.
A great idea? Okay. So through this time, we've been living with it every day. We've been doing things. What are some of the highlights? Like, what are some of the things that you've really enjoyed about owning this vehicle?
The gear tunnel.
The gear tunnel.
I love the gear tunnel.
What about the gear tunnel? What do you use it for?
It just, well, because you can't get in the back without having some sort of step. I use it to get into the back. I use it for storage. Like, it's where I put the groceries. I use the front too, but I definitely think, I don't know, I just like the gear tunnel. It's so fun. We pop it down and the kids will sit on it, eat lunch if we're somewhere. I mean, how many times have we done that where they'll like sit and eat lunch? Yeah.
So the functionality of it, so we've done a lot of beach trips and things like that.
I love having a truck again. Even though the bed is, you know, on the smaller size, it's worked for everything I've needed. So I've been able to load garden supplies and wood, even full sheets of plywood have fit in there just fine. So just having the functionality of storage and everything has been probably the nicest because we haven't had a truck in a little while, so we definitely use it for that.
And that brings us to today's sponsor, AG1 by Athletic Greens. AG1 by Athletic Greens is my go-to supplement to help support immunity during flu season. Having 2 kids in different schools, almost every week someone is coming home with something, and I feel good knowing that I'm taking 75 different vitamins and minerals to keep me going. I've been taking AG1 by Athletic Greens for a while now as my daily go-to for full body nutrition. It helps support the normal detoxification process and supports energy throughout the day, meaning I need less coffee to keep me going. I found this especially helpful since I switched to decaf for my afternoon coffee when I learned that caffeine stays in your system for a long time and can really negatively impact your sleep. AG1 by Athletic Greens also helps promote healthy aging, which as someone that just turned 40 this year, I'm really starting to dig more into. So if you haven't yet, I highly recommend trying AG1 by Athletic Greens. To get started, you can head over to athleticgreens.com/BenSullins or check the link down there just below the like button. And for doing so, they're gonna hook you up. You're gonna get 5 free travel packs and a year's supply of vitamin D3 and K2, which I add into my drinks. Thanks again, AG1 by Athletic Greens, for sponsoring the show. Now back to the video. Now, we have had some service issues.
Yep.
And I am terrible at answering my phone.
So I took over.
Don't call me. Yep.
I took over the service stuff, and I've been pretty happy with it. So, yeah, you have to answer your phone because they do call you. I don't know what else you're comparing to. Maybe Tesla.
There's no other way to get a hold of them or figure it out. You have to like verbally. So they would just always call when I'm recording or I'm in a meeting or I'm just whatever.
Well, you also don't accept phone calls on your phone. Right.
So it doesn't even come through. I just get voicemail. So I had an issue, but so you're in charge of that now.
Yep. And I answer my phone. So I have, and it's always the same person. So I have someone local that has called me and they'll usually tell me everything over the phone of what they're doing, but then drop off the truck. And I think they had it for almost a week last time, and they did all the recall things and all the issues that, honestly, if weren't fixed by now when we were going to have this, it would be a little bit harder to give a nice review because the suspension issue we had was making it a really annoying driving it.
So I'll describe that. So the front left air suspension was leaking. And so every morning we'd come out and the truck was just, you know, tilted sideways right there.
And when we drove it, and I think someone from your videos helped us determine that's what it was. So thank you guys. So basically what was happening is we kind of always felt like we were on this little roller coaster because it was leveling out every day, all day long as we were driving it. And so once they ended up replacing both suspension on each side, I got in it right away, and it's been no issue
really good
since.
Yeah.
And they did have to like diagnose it. They couldn't find it, but that's why it took a full week, because they had to
wait for it to happen. Yeah.
Wait for it to happen. It was a significant leak. Then they had to replace it, let that have 24 hours to see if it leaked.
Test it again. Yeah. And they also fixed the seatbelt that was missing.
We had a missing seatbelt in the middle seat.
That led to them breaking something wrong with the other seat on the back, and then they fixed that. So we've had 2 recalls. There was a seatbelt recall and the bolt tightening recall.
Okay.
Which was one that made all the news.
Yeah. So that all those have been taken care of. Oh, what's that called? The tonneau cover?
Yeah.
So yeah, you had sent me with like, okay, here's what's wrong with the tonneau cover, and when I got there, they kind of alluded to the fact that they're going to redesign it, or maybe...
And they sent out an email recently, too,
okay.
that said, hey, this... And I think they're not even delivering them with tonneau covers anymore.
Yeah.
Because they just know they're going to have to replace it. So that's an outstanding issue. Ours thankfully works still. So
it makes some funky noises.
Yeah, it is kind of creaky and weird, and like the trim pieces falling off, but hey, it
I like
works.
having it, but I don't... The first thing I said when we got this truck is I said, that thing's not going to last. It just has that mechanics that you're like...
It's so nice, though. Like, so we just went on a road trip. We've been on 2 big road trips, which we'll talk about. But we just went on this road trip where it was going to be potentially snowing or raining and stuff. I think it did rain.
Yeah.
And it was just nice to have something, because you have a lot of stuff in there. And when you stop, you're not necessarily bringing everything inside. Like, we had a big bin of snow clothes, and we had our golf clubs, and we had all these things in there. It's nice just to leave them in there, covered, secured, all the things. So tonneau cover is definitely a plus, but they definitely have to figure out the design and what's going on with it.
That would be my one still. I just know that thing's going to break.
Yeah, totally. So we did, like as I mentioned, go on 2 different road trips. One was, they both were about 1,000 miles each. One was up and down California from San Diego to Carmel, California, then over to Sequoia National Forest, and then back down to San Diego. And on this trip, we're in California. I only remember like 2 times we had to actually visit chargers.
The one up to, like, when we went all the way to Monterey?
Yeah. And that was just because I was dumb and didn't bring a charging adapter or anything with me. But the charging hole situation there worked out really well in both instances.
So the key is, and we get into this problem no matter what EV we're driving, if you don't charge up at night where you're staying, it's always a different trip. If you charge up at night wherever you're staying, whether it's someone's house or a hotel with a destination charger, you don't worry about charging at all, because every day you get up, your car is fully charged and you're ready to get on the road, because the worst is when you've just depleted your charge from your road trip and then you park and you need the next day, you can't go explore, you have to find where to charge.
You have to have a place to charge when you're staying somewhere.
That, I feel like, has made all the road trips so much more enjoyable when we get there around 4 o'clock, we charge up, we plug the car in, and we just go explore and have fun while the car's charging overnight. The next morning we get up and we don't even think about it. We either are going to keep driving to a new destination, or we can go drive an hour and go somewhere else to explore, and we don't have to think about it.
So, funny story, the place in near Sequoia National Forest, a town called 3 Rivers, we were staying at an Airbnb, which is just this like mountain house.
Yeah, so that was another thing, is you can filter Airbnbs for EVs, and there kind of wasn't any lodging because we booked last minute.
Yeah.
So I got a place with a charger.
Charger. They
listed it as EV
It was
charger.
an outlet, and it was in the backyard, so you couldn't even reach it. But thankfully, the Rivian is a fairly capable vehicle, so we just drove up and around the mountain up into the backyard so we could charge. Now, overnight, we're getting
9 miles.
Yeah, something like 11 or 12. But the town was only 3 miles away, so we're just going to the town and back. I mean, we're going to be doing well overnight. You know what I mean?
But again, not having a great charging situation overnight, that meant we went into Sequoia National Forest.
Yeah.
We came out. We explored the town a little bit, went back to our Airbnb. The next day we got up, I was like, I want to go back to that little watering hole in Sequoia. We start mapping now, and it's like, man, it's not worth the fact that we lose all these miles going through Sequoia National Park again.
Yeah, the next charging stop would be extra than what it would be without that.
That was a little compromise because we couldn't find a good place to stay that had good charging. So I do feel like we had some hiccups, but for the most part,
lots of lessons learned.
Road tripping in California is really, really simple with an EV.
Yeah.
There's just chargers everywhere.
And then fast forward, we just went on a road trip to Arizona from San Diego to Phoenix and then up to Sedona and back. And this didn't go nearly as well. Now, So the places, so up in Sedona was the problem because we stayed at a place that said they had an EV charger, but they didn't. It was just an outlet. And so we didn't really think much of it because, oh, there's chargers nearby. There are not. Not fast chargers anyways. There is one Tesla supercharger that was 30 minutes away, and that was the only fast charger within 60, 70 miles. So one of the days before we left, we actually had to just go drop our truck off at a slow charger.
All day.
I'll leave it there all day, roll around with my parents and have them chauffeur us around, which was great that we could do that. But at the same time, we've got 2 young kids who were waiting on grandma and grandpa to kind of get their stuff together, and they're not the most punctual people.
And we also changed what we did.
Yeah,
we couldn't go up where we wanted
so
to
it was much more of a challenge again because we stayed at a place that said they had an EV charger, but in fact they really didn't. And then on the way back from that road trip, we got stuck, which was not cool. Okay, this is the real problem here. I'm at another Electrify America station. This one's in El Centro, and I've tried every charger. This one's finally working. Max speed I'm getting is 35 kilowatts. And I think it has something to do with all these chargers. Like, I think if someone else pulls up and starts plugging in, it's gonna trip the whole breaker, I guess, or whatever it is. I've been here, there were 4 other people, we're all having issues. They've reset them, done all the things. And unfortunately, we have to charge here to make it home. There is no other option. We'd have to backtrack 50 miles the other way, and we don't even have enough to get that. So yeah, this is where it becomes a pain in the butt, and this is where it truly does suck. You know, word to the wise, don't stop in El Centro if you need to. If you absolutely need to get a charge, stop elsewhere if you can. And then it always goes back to rule number 1, make sure wherever you sleep, you have a charger so you wake up fully charged, ready to go, so you're in the best possible position, because this is not fun, especially with the 2 kids. That was the first time where I'm sitting there going, we might have to rent a place in El Centro because there's literally no option. The only choice is to get this thing working, spend a couple hours, or go back to Yuma. And like, that's a waste. We're not going to do that.
The only comparable thing I've had happen is a Tesla charger station being too busy.
Yeah, where you can't charge, you're waiting.
Yeah, where you're waiting, but you're like, okay, I know I can charge eventually, but maybe you have to wait 20 or 30 minutes.
It's not like if you don't own a Tesla, you're SOL, like you're screwed. It's not like that.
No.
It's like Tesla was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Like, remember when we first got our Model S, there was in San Diego County 1 Tesla supercharger, and there were 6 stalls at it. And it was at it was at Qualcomm. So there's a bunch of people there that have Teslas already it was always full.
We also found on our first road trip a really great spot that now I'm like, we should totally go back to. It was in the middle of California, like in the middle of nowhere. Do you remember what it was called? It was on the way to 3 Rivers.
Harris Ranch.
Harris Ranch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a gigantic Tesla supercharging station and huge Electrify America. Like, these guys have the market. Fantastic place to stop.
I remember when we did on the map, you were like, there's nowhere else, so we just have to stop here.
You got to stop there.
Yeah.
And again, that, so being in California, knowing what we know now. So, yeah, so that was, I think, an interesting, very good learning experience.
Yep.
Sacrificing it for you guys so you don't have to go through that. Skip the El Centro stop if you can, please. But overall, I mean, how are you feeling about the vehicle? Like, comfort-wise, driving-wise? I mean, you don't drive it nearly as much now. I feel like when we first got it, you were driving it a lot.
Yeah, it's not my daily driver, but I don't, like, when I have to drive it, I don't mind driving it. Like, it's fun being in it, and it's easy to load stuff in there for me. I still have the issue with the back being too high, but they did do an update that lowers it.
Right. Kneel mode, they call it,
Yeah.
where it'll automatically, when you hit park, if you have it enabled, it will automatically lower to the absolute lowest setting. Like, you can't drive in that setting. And then when you get in and you, go back and drive or whatever, it'll pop back up to whatever setting.
And it's been really comfortable with the whole family in it. Like, when we just went on the road trip, it was fun because we normally take my car, I think. I think we've taken my car a few times.
Yeah.
But we always are kind of playing, Jenga and, like, what can we take and what can we
whereas
not.
in this, it's like,
We
whatever.
threw in, like, a Costco-sized bin of snow gear just in case it snowed. And that was kind of fun.
Yeah, it's
it was
nice
fun
to have that
having
room.
that extra room. And I tend to load the gear tunnel with, like, the stuff I need to access for the kids. I can't keep the snacks in the car because we have a 3-year-old and he'll just gorge himself the whole trip.
Yep.
But I just get out and I use the gear tunnel and I, like, make them little snack things. And I just really like the layout and the access with it. And it feels spacious, but again, it's spacious being compact, which is great for me in city driving.
Right. Because I was going to say, we also had a F-150 Lightning loaner from Ford.
This thing is the lazy boy of trucks.
So what do you think about it? I mean, because I was in love with that
It's
thing.
not a bad thing. It is
big. It was really big.
It's huge.
Yeah.
But yeah, it made me look at this truck differently.
Right.
I really, all of a sudden, I got back in here and I go, okay, this is like the sports car version of a truck.
Yeah.
It's tailored. It's minimal. It's adventure. It's like cool.
Yep.
The F-150, it's not trying to be cool.
It's no nonsense.
It's just like
comfort.
It's like It's like if you bought like a tuxedo couch or like a rounded over 80s plush sofa.
Yes.
Like
give me the 80s. I want it.
It just had, this huge center console and stuff. So yeah, I guess I like the more tailored of this.
Yeah. It's much more California, much more us.
Feels like a California truck.
But a funny story or funny example there is in the F-150 Lightning, the cab is so much bigger than this that, like, on the back here, we have these kick mats so our kids can't kick the seat, or if they do, it doesn't, rough up the seat. Well, in the F-150, you didn't need that because they couldn't even reach the seat in front of them.
It was
so they're like trying to kick and be angry. And you're like, go ahead. There's like a million buttons everywhere and they're all labeled. So it's like the opposite of this aesthetically minimalist approach that most of these newer companies
the software stuff.
Okay. Yeah. How do you feel about the software?
Well, I'm curious how you feel about it.
So
because
it still is practically useless. We've on the road trip had many times where we're navigating somewhere. We're like, where is it going? So the navigation, you can see it. It can function, but if you really need to get somewhere and want a reliable answer, you don't use the navigation in the Rivian yet.
Yeah.
There have been several software updates. There's still no Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, so I have my separate screen, which I added, which is what I rely on. And I'll give a good, solid example of that. Taking the kids to school in the morning, depending on which way you go, can be a 20 to 30 minute difference, right? Because you could get totally jammed up in some construction or something like that. I use Waze, and Waze knows this. Even Google Maps, who Google bought Waze, they also have the data in there, and I'm pretty sure Apple Maps has it as well. So I have to use one of those services in order to not be stuck in traffic, because if I'm stuck for 20 or 30 minutes in traffic, I'll be late. So the software still has a long way to go. Now, I will say one thing about that, and this relates to our road trip. When we went on the road trip, it was navigating us to Yuma, and it said we would have 100 miles left over when we got there. 120 miles, I think, when we got there.
And we didn't believe that.
I was like, no chance. Because
hills.
In the Tesla, in your Model Y, it took about 260 rated miles.
Yeah.
So meaning if it says 300 miles, we would get there with 40 miles left.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it's only 140 miles away. So it means it took a lot more because you go over this big mountain range. It makes sense. In the Rivian, though, from the starting point, it said we'd have 120 miles left over. And then as we got up the hills, it changed it to 99. And I still was like, no way. But we got there, and it was spot on. So whatever bit of software they have in terms of estimating your range, even with hills, it's actually
they did really good.
Far better than I thought. So, which is good because that's like a critical piece of software.
Yeah, there's other things that are way more exciting about this truck.
Yeah, it drives like a dream. The acceleration, the handling are just incredible. The gear tunnel, like you said, so fun, so cool. The frunk, the bed in the back. Everything. The truck itself is 10 out of 10.
Didn't you just plug in our miter saw
Yeah.
You were trying to like...
We were cutting, travertine, we were cutting with the chop saw, miter saw, and we needed a place to do it. So we went out in there, went out in the driveway, and then I just plugged it into the truck and then used it. Made a huge mess in the bed of it, but super cool that works, right?
Yep, and we've used it for my paddleboard. We've used it to fill up the tires on the bikes. We've been having a lot of fun loading 3 bikes. 3 bikes. Yeah. Loading 3 bikes in, including the EV bike, which is more cumbersome.
Yep, the e-bike. Yep.
Or what did I call it?
EV bike.
EV bike. The e-bike. And we don't even have to hang it over the edge or anything. They all fit in there.
Yeah. And the air, like you said, the air compressor.
The air compressor.
Super functional. Yeah. Amazing vehicle, I would say, overall.
I like that it already has the...
Yeah, whatever the bed liner is.
The bed liner,
yeah, whatever that is to protect things.
I like that it has that. Yeah, it's a sexy vehicle.
You like it?
Yeah, it's really...
I like how someone described it as it looks new and old at the same time.
Like it's familiar and comfortable.
It looks like new and sleek and sexy, but also like, oh, I've seen that before.
Yeah.
And so the number one question we get always is, who makes that? And we say, oh, Rivian. And they say, yeah, but who makes it? That's always the second most popular question, right? Okay. Good idea to buy one for us?
Yeah, and then if you're considering the R1S...
Yeah, because we had that for a week.
We just had that for a week. And this was a big question I had, was how much we would use the truck bed portion over needing, something that was more of an SUV. So if you're considering which one, if you're like, oh, I definitely want a Rivian and I don't know which one, didn't we kind of review both of those?
So we did a review on the R1S, and
you can go check that out, 'cause...
Yeah, if you want a full breakdown of that, we'll put a link to there. But if I remember, it was like we actually think the truck was a better buy because we don't really need that third row nearly as often.
That's the teaser. Is it depends on what your needs are. So for us, the truck ended up being
a better
best thing.
move.
And we didn't really know beforehand, so that was my first experience with the SUV, and so now I just feel like I love the truck even more because I'm like, oh, this was the one that was good for us because having the access to the truck bed for us was the win.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a fan.
Maybe you'll let me drive it again sometime.
Not gonna happen.
Don't share.
Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to check out my site, evdecide.com, for more about this, as well as all the other EVs out there, and I'll see you back here next time.